Howdy.
Welcome to the Saber Coach Kate podcast, where I highlight the great athletes, thinkers, referees, and coaches in the dynamic sport of Olympic fencing.
Yard. Howdy.
Lisa Campi-Sapery is a woman who has filled pretty much every possible role in our sport. Elite college athlete, coach, international referee, referee trainer, club owner, and published author. She is known as the fencing referee in various places online, including her YouTube channel, fencing.net, and Facebook. She started fencing when her sister Barb thought the guy at the recruiting table was cute, and the rest is history. Tune in today to hear more about this history, a life story you will find both inspirational and uplifting. As a side note, if you're interested in her scouting journals, they are available on Amazon and from several fencing vendors. Hi everybody, and welcome to the Saber Coach Kate podcast. I am delighted to be talking to the fencing referee herself, Lisa Campi-Sapery. Hi Lisa.
Hello, Kate. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure. All right. Well, let's launch off with how you became a fencer.
Well, it all started with my sister. She saw a cute guy at the sign-up table. And that sounds crazy that that's what launched both of our careers, but yeah. And she started me in our backyard before my freshman year in high school. And it just grew from there.
So a sign-up table where?
At the high school that we both were from New Jersey. New Jersey is, everybody knows, is like the hotbed for high school fencing. There are about 70 high schools with varsity fencing. A handful of those are prep schools and private schools. I'm president of the high school association for coaches, Coaches Association. And so yeah, it's been a varsity sport at our high school for the whole time. So, like literally since like 1953. So she wanted to do something that matched with dance and focus and intensity, and I guess that's what kind of drew both of us in. And I don't think that guy at the sign-up table continued with it, but Barb and I sure did.
That's really funny. Well, as you're saying that, being from Texas, where football is king, I just can't even imagine having fencing be a varsity sport in a high school, much less 70 of them. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's a different culture. I really feel like every kid can find the sport that they're supposed to do, and sometimes we get kids who are just athletes who they find fencing, and fencing is their home. Sometimes we lose kids because the culture is not incredibly supportive of fencing. But we try to kind of, as a program, kind of unify people in that it's okay to be weird. It's okay to be different because, it is not football. It's not basketball. And I substitute teach at the high school. So I do try to do a lot of cultural differences because I tell the kids when I sub, I like all sports. And some kids put my feet to the fire and they're like, what do you like about all sports? And I'm like, the tactics, the brain power. Like I love watching somebody set up a goal in soccer or in hockey. I just am fascinated by that because that's very tactical. And these kids are now seeing the woman who's just the fencing coach, in quotes, and they're like, wait, she likes all sports. That's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So I really try to have that culture of coolness because we are.
Well, yeah, we are. Well, and it's neat that you're using your substitute teaching as like an outreach almost for, not like you're trying to make conversions to fencing, but just to kind of spread the gospel of fencing as it is.
Yeah. Well, I do tell them it's very therapeutic to hit people for sport, but that's usually deeper into the day of subbing. I don't want to just say that because I don't want to scare the kids.
After the coffee's wearing off.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't want them to think like that.
Okay, so originally you were attracted to the sport because of the handsome young man at the sign-up table. But
No, that was Barb. That was Barb. I started because she started me. Barb was the one.
well, what was it that appealed to you once you got into it?
The grace and the flow of it, and the fact that you could kind of lose yourself in it, the tactics, it actually lends itself to a similar freedom of dance, believe it or not, and art. And I was kind of, thanks to dancing, and I don't know that many people would say that, I was kind of an athlete who could do anything. Like I used to, every once in a while, play basketball. I liked running track. And those coaches in the high school actually were trying to get me to do their sports. I'm actually grateful that we didn't have volleyball when I was in high school, because I might have done that, because I've got a pretty good jump thing, but I did a couple camps as a coach and as an athlete at the Olympic Training Center, and I would have been short for volleyball, and I'm not short. And you would watch them in the dining hall with ice packs on their shoulder, elbow, knee. And I'm thinking, oh, thank God. Thank goodness I ended up being a fencer, because I didn't end up having to be like that.
Yeah.
But I think I was meant to find a sport, and the sport that I needed to find was fencing. It was just so many things about it just clicked.
Well, it's interesting that tie that you mentioned to dance, because aren't ballet and fencing connected somehow?
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's so much we have such unique history in our sport. When I do demos, one of the things I tell them is that there are hieroglyphic stick fighters in Egypt that our modern mask is based on. And that really kind of, it's like, wow, we have something from ancient Egypt that actually ties to modern fencing. And there are not a lot of sports that have that length of history.
Well, tell me about the weapon or the weapons that you fenced, and what it was that appealed to you about them.
Well, as a coach, I joke that the three weapons are like my children. I love them all equally. Because, of course, my squads tend to be like, no, foil's the best, no, saber's the best. It's like, But I'm a dinosaur, so I had to fence foil. Foil was the only weapon that was available to me in high school and in college. About 3 years after I graduated college, women's epee came into being, and about 2 years after that, women's saber came into being. So when I was in high school, it was four women against 4 women, dual meet, and then that was reflected in high school. So my big, I don't think controversy, but I guess the debate in my head is that were I to start fencing now, I think I would have been put as a saber fencer. And I feel like I got so many gifts from foil, understanding of priority, the specific fine motor skills to make my precision really great, the tactics, the understanding how you can kind of, I say to my fencers, you can steal from all 3 weapons. Like, when you've got a bulldozer, you're stealing from saber, doing the false steps to make them slow down, trying to find a moment. You steal from epee, the other 2 weapons, when you've got a lousy referee and you've got to make it one light. You've got all these things that you can steal from all of the weapons. And I now wonder if I would be a 3-weapon coach if I were to start in saber. Because foil gave me such an amazing foundation. When it comes to refereeing, I ask my referees, because sometimes they come to me and they've got 8s in all weapons, and I'm like, well, what's your heart? And that's what I call it. What's your weapon that you want to referee, that you love? And my love for refereeing is foil. I love refereeing foil. I can do it on the 6th day of Junior Pan Ams. I can't speak English, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I can referee in French. And I have no idea how I do that. I just can. And so when you ask me what weapon, I can tell you that I was an ABC classification-wise. I was an A in FA. And now here's the irony that I confess in a podcast, oh dear. I fenced FA because I didn't like referees. The woman who says she's the fencing referee is telling you that she was led to FA because she didn't like referees. So epee, of course, epee referees can be not great, but it's much less likely to happen. And so when it came down to what I fenced epee, honestly, probably because even though saber resonated with me, there was something about the control. I don't want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But something about controlling my own destiny in epee that appealed more.
Right. Didn't have to worry about that priority and the interpretation of it.
And honestly, what I love about foil and saber for that matter is that game of priority. I love that. But because I didn't like referees, I ended up going into epee. So I was an A in epee, a B in foil, and a C in saber.
Okay.
And that's also a relic. You find very few people. Nowadays, you'll find foil epeists, and clubs will actually promote that so kids can get more fencing experience as they're learning in their early ages of learning. But you find there are very few people who can actually say that they've earned classifications at all. And so I'm okay being a dinosaur. I'm okay being a relic. I'm all right with that.
Well, you got to fence in the Div 1 program at the University of North Carolina. So tell me what that was like.
I wanted to go to a school that had fencing, and I had actually been recruited to NC State. The coach before Yuri at St. John's had recruited me, wanted me to go there. I wanted to find the right academic school, and have it be Div 1 for me. And so I completely lucked into getting into Carolina. I got into Carolina. I got recruited 4 weeks before school started. So, and it was bar none the luckiest thing to happen to me, because I was from a very competitive club where it felt at that time that the results were more important than the content of what you were doing. And that was completely flipped on its head at Carolina. It was more about working hard and trusting you. For example, there were people on paper who were better than me, but for 3 years of my career, I was the last bout. And by that I mean, women's foil, it could be 8-8, and you could win and have 8 victories, but still not win the dual meets based on indicator. And for 3 years, I was that last bout. And there were people who did better than I did, sometimes with results, but coach trusted me to be that person. And I always saw it as confidence. And when I started assistant coaching at Carolina, other people saw it as pressure. And I'm like, no, this means the coach knows that you're the person that we want. And so it was definitely an interesting mental shift to go from fencing in a Div 1 program to assistant coaching in a Div 1 program. And it's, it was an incredibly positive experience. It was, I learned how to be an athlete. I learned how to be diligent. I learned how to fence for the sake of fencing, not fence for a result. And honestly, one of the things I love about my foil career is that my foil career was never for me. It was always for Morris Hills or Carolina or South Centennial, New Jersey. It was never that. FA was for me. Foil was for a team, so it elevated my abilities, because on paper I should have been getting my butt handed to me, but I would go 3-1 against some of the best universities in the country. And I would lose only one bout because those people were going to be top 8 in the NCAA. So, yeah, Div 1 experience was amazing. And Ron Miller, I will just call him coach. My joke is that he is coach with a capital C. My persona is Coach Lisa, so it's like one word. He is coach with a capital C. His wife calls him coach. I do that way. Other coaches call him coach. So I don't call him Ron. I call him coach.
Yes.
With capital C. Yeah. And he is a legend, and I am so happy that I got to work with him.
Tell me what you think is your greatest accomplishment as a fencer.
It's funny. I don't let my high school kids ask me about my career because I tell them it's about them. And so I first I was worried. I was like, I guess I won't say anything because I don't want my kids to know. I don't know if they'll find this podcast. Some of them are very clever. They might. I like to say I sucked at a world-class level, which means when you opened up the FIU magazine, that at the time was in print. Now everything's digital. You could use a magnifying glass and find my name for my world rank for 2 seasons, and it would be in really tiny font, and you'd need a magnifying glass. And that's how I describe my best fencing accomplishment, was that I had a world rank for 10 minutes, but it was never good enough. And I never felt it was good enough. And I basically went from being 8th in the country to being 8th from the bottom because of a medical problem that I didn't know was coming on. I have muscular dystrophy of some form. They don't know what. So my greatest accomplishments now are that my kids got 4th in the state, and I had the best men's team ever. It's not about me. It's about them. So me, I always wanted to be better. So I guess I'm bitter about not getting to where I wanted to go.
Well, I think that's the mark of a true competitor, though, is never being satisfied with where you're at.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's good. That's why you are a coach right there.
Well, speaking of that, tell me about your coaches. You mentioned coach with a capital C.
Yes.
So talk about your coaches and anyone else who's had an impact on you in the fencing world.
Well, Coach Ron Miller, he instills in you this positive force of wanting to accomplish for a team, and that it's about the hard work, and that if you work hard, you can do extraordinary things. I've had a lot of coaches via camps, via other ways, Jerzy Jimsky. Most people know of Sharon Everson as a referee, but she actually gave excellent lessons as a coach. And I was recently lucky enough to be at the Hall of Fame dinner. And I remember Sharon, I still do this drill, actually. I still give foil fencers this drill. I asked Sharon what was the inspiration of this particular drill. And she goes, it's a Joe Paczynski drill. And I described it to a Joe Paczynski fencer, and she's like, oh my gosh, I took that lesson. So I really feel like as an American coach, you absorb and you process and you kind of get stuff from people, and then your secret sauce in your head merges it all together and you make it yours. With Coach, his foil actually, some of his foil comes from Chava Eltesh. His epee comes from Tchaikovsky. And the other day I was giving a lesson to a person, and I realized that I had somehow merged his system and Tchaikovsky's system, and they are incongruous systems. Like, they do not work together. And yet, somehow, you, as an American coach, you merge it together. And it happens in refereeing, too. Monica Tsemet, she was refereeing for me, and she kind of described an action to somebody as a saber referee, like you were looking for a mistake you didn't make. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to steal that. So you can get these inspirations from so many places. And yeah, it's, Monica's not just the beautiful person on Instagram. She is this intelligent, smart, powerful woman who, I say as a coach, you need to be learning from everywhere. I got to work with Josef Katsipski. He's amazing. Laura Masters, Mark Masters. I mean, these are incredible coaches that I just feel so lucky to have worked with. And then I had training camps. So I like to say that as an American coach, I try to absorb from everywhere.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You've been a national level fencer, coach, referee, and bout committee member. What does each role allow you to express about yourself, and which do you prefer?
So you're saying I don't have a life? That's interesting. No, I'm kidding.
A fencing coach? I mean, you don't know. You don't have lives.
All right, that's fair enough. I always joke that sometimes kids shows can give you inspiration, like Mr. Rogers was awesome. When my nephew was little, he would watch Thomas the Tank Engine, and Thomas the Tank Engine's primary focus is to be a useful engine. And that's what I really feel each role brings, is that I want to be a useful engine. I just want to be part of the cogs of the system that makes for an excellent tournament. And when I was working in corporate fitness, there are so many things that happen at a tournament that I think are just like corporate fitness. They're invisible. Nobody, I call it invisible work, in fact. Nobody knows the inner workings that make a tournament seem flawless. You know? And it's invisible work, you know, and the invisible work starts 5, 6, 7 weeks before with acquiring the right composition of referees, making sure you have bout committee, making sure you have all the right support staff. And so to me, as the daughter of an engineer and a nurse, it's about problem solving and it's about the details to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So I don't know that I have a particular role that I love more than the other parts. I just want to be a useful engine. So when I get handed a pool to do, I'll just do it. I don't care. Coil FA Saver, I do it because that's what the tournament needs. And I've run significant tournaments. Before we had all the computers, I ran the NCAA regionals for Mid-Atlantic South. And, you know, when you have people breathing over your neck, I'm running it on cards, you know, way before we had the computers. And people were like, this was one of the smoothest NCAA regionals we've ever had. And I'm like, well, until it went on computers, yeah, you had to know, you had to have a brain who could do it. And so I guess it's all about the details. It's all about the invisible stuff. Because it really is not effortless. But man, do we make it look effortless, don't we?
No, I was thinking about our North Texas Roundup that we just hosted last weekend as you were talking about this. And yeah, people will come up and say, hey, you know, this is a great tournament. It's running really well. Great job. And I'm thinking, oh, if you guys only knew. I mean, you said 7 weeks out. I mean, we're talking a year in advance, and I'm sure it's the same
for you. Oh, yeah.
I mean, getting the venue, and, you know, it's really hard now to secure referees because so many people now are hosting these regional events. And so you got to secure people way ahead of time. And really, what are your tools for success for running a smooth tournament like that? I mean, I know, like, for David, it's getting a really good referee cadre, because if you have good people out on the floor, it eliminates a lot of issues right from the start. And then also, I'd say it's about committee that knows what they're doing. But what are your steps for success for a big tournament like that?
Well, you're right. It starts with the bid process, and then it trickles down. I think we could be more successful. I'll say a little controversial thing. I really feel like USA Fencing should have the regional events go out to a 3-year plan, meaning that we know where we're going to be 3 years in advance, because then especially in my area, the venues are so expensive.
Yeah.
Our venues on the Northeast are very expensive, and our tournaments grow almost out of control. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I use email a lot. One of the problems I have is that people think that if they communicate with me via Facebook, that means that I know what's going on. I had one young lady at this past tournament. She emailed me on August 18th, and I laughed. I said, well, that's why I didn't realize it. This poor girl had gotten 4 more emails about this event and had never reminded me, oh, by the way, you still have me on this list. I can't come. So I was like, oh, man. You know, because she had told me 2 ahead of schedule. Yeah. But, you know, right now I do the email me system for my tournaments like USA Fencing does. And we use email me actually for one of the largest, we run, my Coaches Association runs the largest high school event in the world. And we've gone to an email me system for even entries of the teams. It's more than 50 teams, all 3 weapons, 2 days. It's the largest high school event in the world. And we've gone to an email me system. So I think what I'm basically saying is that technology has helped us. Yeah. Technology has helped us a lot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, no more cards either. Well, I think I would be a bit remiss if we didn't talk about your sister, Barb Lynch, a little bit, especially because she's the one who even, got you hooked on fencing. Tell me a couple of good stories about her, either as a fencer or as a person.
Well, I always joke that younger siblings are better. My husband disagrees, and he always says, Barb would agree that older siblings are better. And I like to put it that Barb was vice president for the whole federation, but I got my A. So, everybody's got their battles they're facing. But the only way that happens is by getting support from Barb. My sister coached me my senior year in high school as the high school coach, and she was there for 23 years, or 22 years after that. And my mom always said that it was an interesting year having my sister be the coach, and we're all living in the same house. And so she always said it was very challenging. Barb always had said to me, you fence because you want to fence. Don't fence because of me. And so it really, as a younger sibling, it took the pressure off of me entirely and made all of my ambitions my own. And I don't know that all older siblings would do that, And Barb ran her program in high school as a family and a community, and I mirrored that. But Barb had, and if you can see the sarcasm is genetic. I got it from my mother. Barb got it from her mom. But it's just, there was, when Barb was about committee chair, she did it with sarcasm and charm and grace and humor, and that has left an imprint on our bout committees. Like, Barb's been gone 8 years, and there are still people on our bout committee that have been trained by Barb. And that's awesome. Mm-hmm. My husband started actually doing bout committee because Barb taught him. Mm-hmm. About 5 years before he knew we were siblings, I think. Because, Barb was Bart Lynch at the time, not Bart Campi.
Right.
One of my favorite stories was Barb was bout committee chair at Summer Nationals, and Jenny Don't, that's her maiden name, Jenny Salmon, her children were very young, and Barb saw somebody looking very cranky coming to the bout committee table. And she goes, somebody hand me Jenny's baby. They can't yell at me if I have an adorable baby in my arms. And so sure enough, Jenny would give the baby, and they would say, you have a problem? And they would be like, oh, look at the baby. So there was Barb completely diffusing the situation, and it was just very classic Barb,
Baby
power, humor, the whole 9 yards. It was just like, they can't yell at me if I'm holding the baby. And so, but that was very classic Barb, that she would handle things with humor. And I think that that's something that is still there, because it is difficult work, and Barb always knew that it was hard work. Mm-hmm. But I just love that Barb still got people out there that she taught. I think that's great.
And since she was so tied into the fencing community, after she died 8 years ago, was it hard to continue in this sport just because it would remind you so much of her?
Actually, the opposite. Actually, completely the opposite, because we all had supported each other. I was actually, this past Summer Nationals, I was able to do a little talking about scouting during the vet FA clinic that the national team had held. And I don't remember if that's when I had asked Kelly Hurley about this, but I know that I'd mentioned it at some point, Kelly Hurley and Iris and Felicia. And if you have a sister, you really know how a part of my heart was lost. You know what I mean? And this fencing family thing that we have, it's not just the people that you're blood related to. You get family in other ways. So it was actually just the opposite. It wasn't that fencing reminded me of her. It was that fencing was supporting me, because Barb had said when she got cancer that people hugged her in a different way when they would see her at tournaments. And that happened to me after she passed. And they would say Barb with this love, Barb, they would have this way of saying Barb. And that actually helped me, because it was like this group grieving process. Mm-hmm. And knowing that her intellect and her, super smarts and super great organizational skills were still being used, it just meant that it was still there. And so to me, it was not a burden. It was a way of helping me lift myself up from it, because we were all grieving together.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed your shirt. Why don't you tell the audience what shirt you're wearing?
Oh, well, I got one of my Morrisville high school shirts on, and on our shirts, we either have like the outline of a teal ribbon or an actual teal ribbon, and it says "I fence for Barb" on it, and it's got Bart Lynch on it, and then the day she passed. And that's kind of our way of continuing her legacy. I mean, she coached for 23 years there, so I like to think of it still as her team, but she's been gone now for so long. When her freshmen became seniors, we started an essay contest where a varsity athlete, didn't have to be from fencing, from any team, would write an essay about how cancer has impacted their lives. And it was an essay contest. And the first year we did that, two of her seniors, what would have been her seniors, won it not just because they spoke about Bart, but they spoke about the impact of watching somebody fight cancer with such grace. Mm. So, to me, I'm very, very vehement. I don't know if vehement's the right word. I'm very passionate about keeping her alive. I still wear a teal ribbon on my ref jacket. People ask me, why do you have that teal ribbon? And I still have a lot of friends who wear teal ribbons on their jackets, because it's our way of making sure Barb is still there.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Well, that kind of beauty doesn't happen unless you've got amazing people. And I would like to say that fencing has a lot of amazing people.
Yeah. You mentioned before that, fencers are a little weird, but we're really loyal, and we are beautiful people, too. Well, we've been talking about you as a fencer. Let's move on to why you decided to become a coach.
Well, I was always teaching something. I was assistant teaching dance when I was young, because it helped with us getting discounts. Barb and I were taking so many dance classes that it would help us get discounts on stuff so that my parents could afford to have us dance. Actually, I was dancing so much and fencing so much, I'm not sure how I did high school. Like, I don't even know how I did that. But basically, I was taking camps in the summer, and I was learning so much in those camps. My high school coach, until Barb took over my senior year, was just the German teacher who wanted to not have the team die. So he took over, and he didn't know anything about fencing. And so really, it's not the ideal, but he just had the kids coach each other. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned that I kind of wanted to be a three-weapon coach, because I was like, sophomore year in high school, I did this amazing camp at Santelli, and I was like, wow, I learned the foundations. I'm going to go. I'm going to keep doing this. And so that I really feel like I started coaching my sophomore year in high school, because I wanted to make sure that the team was going to be good. And then I don't remember if it was my junior or my senior year, coach had me take over the junior development project, NCFDP, and so I was just basically continuing with that. And I just started that. I mean, I started coaching from a very young age, but I'm one of those I do have some formal coaching training, but I'm just one of those people who I just teach. That's one of my basic things that I do.
And who were the people that you looked to in order to develop your coaching style? You mentioned earlier this American way of coaching, and David and I have talked about it that way too. But were there any particular influences that you had?
Well, I mean, for me, of course, I always tried to pull the best drills from the coaches. Like if I wanted to be working in tempo, I'm working a Jersey drill. If I want to work on foundations of the sixth wall, I'm going to be using something Coach Miller taught me. The only formal training I had to coach were, I think I did 3 or 4 coaches' colleges where you're learning how to feed an arm hit. And then I also specifically worked with Coach Miller in coaching Sabre, because I felt that was my weak point, and I was always fascinated by Sabre. You have to understand, I mean, I started fencing saber along with the other 40 women in the country. Nobody else fenced saber. Barb was one of the original saber fencers as well. So, I did it as an academic process so that I could learn more about this amazing thing. Coach started having women fence saber 4 years before anybody else did. Same with FA. He never took away my FA. When we would qualify or not qualify for NCAAs, I would walk across the room and grab my FA for an FA lesson if we hadn't qualified for the NCAAs because I did foil for him. He never took that away from me. Other coaches were like, no, you can't do foil. And coach was like, you do what's going to help you. But basically, I would say I guess the biggest influence was coach. But I would watch Kelly Williams give lessons and go, wow, that's amazing. And I've been making mental notes. I just watch lessons. Like at NACS, if it's okay, I video the lessons. I just want to learn because you never know. As a fitness educator, I always wanted to fine tune what that person needed. Because not everybody needs the same lesson. There are coaches that give the exact same lesson. And I always feel that the lesson should be fine-tuned to that person. And I don't know where I picked that up, I'll be honest. I don't know where I picked that up. Did I answer your question? I don't even know.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good.
What would you say your coaching philosophy is?
I think that my coaching philosophy, I will step back and say that when I was teaching the Junior Development Project, we had a road trip where we had 15 kids in a van. And as you know, probably from being a parent, that when you're in a car, you can really ask kids things, and they kind of have to answer because they can't leave the car.
Oh, yes.
They've actually done studies that have said that this is the best way to get things out of your teenager. So there I was in a 15-passenger van with, 12 kids, and I asked them about my coaching, and I asked them about what they thought I did. And I had one young man who is now, I think he did his PhD at Stanford. I know he did his undergraduate there. He's brilliant. And he just, without thinking, I said, what do you guys feel about winning? He goes, well, winning is a natural extension of good training. And I went, oh, did I do that? How did that happen? And I was like, well, okay. And to me, my coaching philosophy is to be a sponge and that you can learn lessons from anything, from anywhere around you. He was not my most talented fencer, but he got it, that if you work hard, the victories will come. It's difficult to be patient. Young people want it today, tomorrow, or whatever. But my philosophy is that you've got to be positive, you've got to work hard, and so your opponent is always beatable. I call it clean slate fencing. When I was fencing in high school, if the person had fencing shoes, they have fencing shoes. And what I tell my athletes is, Mommy and Daddy paid for them to put USA on their stuff. They don't have to have USA on their stuff. So don't think that they can beat you just because they've got USA on their stuff. And so fundamentally, it's that if you work hard, you can still be that underdog and beat them. And that's, and you can learn things from not winning too, just as much as you can win. I mean, and sometimes you learn more. I think you definitely learn more from when you don't win a battle. I also am a very tactical fencer and a very tactical coach and a very technical coach, because I also tell my athletes, you never want, if you have a tactical moment and it's the right thing, you shouldn't miss it because your technique is bad. So I'm very, very fundamental. In New Jersey high school, you've got like a week to figure out what weapon this kid's going to be for the rest of their life. You've got a week, and then you've got dual meets. And so your coaching has got to be there. You're always playing catch up. This is where your on guard is. This is the right tempo to go. This is how you do pull the distance in saber. You've got to be fundamental. And I'm always saying to the kids, if your technique is bad, you're going to miss. And because I'm beating it into you, now I'm literally beating it into it, but because I'm beating the tactics into you, you don't want a technical issue to be the reason you miss.
Right. Well, you've been talking about your high school program. You are now the coach of the program that you started in.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about Morrisville High School fencing. And it sounds like Barb was the coach there, and then you took over, right?
Correct. And everybody thought it was a no-brainer for me to, become the coach, but I was working full-time. And luckily I was in corporate fitness, so I could do the early shift, which was 5:45 to 2, but I was working 80-hour weeks.
Wow.
And so when I interviewed with Rob, who is the AD, I have so many friends who have got nightmares with ADs, and I don't. Rob is amazing. I interviewed with him, and he knew it wasn't going to be exactly the same as Bart, but he knew that I was going to kind of forge my way with the same positivity.
Uh-huh.
I also am lucky enough in the program to have one of her alumni, a guy named Andrew Lefty Zlotnick. Lefty is his name. It's actually on his shirts, Coach Lefty, but he got that nickname apparently because there was lots of Andrews, and so he was the left-handed Andrew when he was fencing for Barbs, so Lefty, forevermore. And then I also coach with one of the statistics teachers at Mars Hills, Tony Canoe. How Rob knew that Tony was the right person for our program, I have no idea, but he's been amazing. And so as I took over the program, I tried not to change too much so that the kids would easily transition.
Uh-huh.
The only thing I did was add stuff from my degree, basically, when we first started. Well, Barb didn't have us do this. And my response was, Barb didn't have a master's degree in exercise physiology. Oh, okay. And they would go do what I had told them. But to me, when you take over a program that's been going so long, you have to be judicious in what you're changing. And so fundamentally, the primary thing I changed was just tweaks here and there with physiology stuff that I knew. We've become more competitive because more of our high school kids are realizing that if you're a 12-month fencer, if this is your sport, you can go further.
Right.
Because really, we would be able to beat programs that had the same number of 12-month fencers we did, but then when we were opposing teams that had 9 fencers who were 12-month fencers, we were getting beat, and that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the things that changed from when Barb was coaching. A big change is that more programs have a higher percentage of fencers who are fencing year-round.
Uh-huh.
And that's not to say that people should be only doing one sport, because there are a lot of high school athletic directors in particular who want people to be doing multiple sports because it makes them more well-rounded people. I have a lot of my fencers do the tennis because they're not in a competing time period. So the girls will do tennis, then we have fencing season, then the boys do tennis. I think that's the right order. Right now we've got a girl who's doing volleyball, and then she'll do fencing, and then she'll do track. So we have 3 sport fencers, that's for sure.
Uh-huh.
But it is, that's one of the big changes, is that I think there used to be a lot of only 3-month fencers in the whole New Jersey high school fencing.
Uh-huh.
And that I don't know if Barb would be happy with that, I'll be honest with you. Because it's totally okay to have just a 3-month fencer. It really is.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because if these kids want to be kids, and I'm always telling them that. Actually, what I tell my team is become the officers for your other clubs, so you can decide when the meetings are, so you don't miss them. And sure enough, that's what they do,
that's
so
a really
that they don't miss
smart
practice.
Piece of advice.
You know,
that's really good. How do you cultivate?
Opportunistic, just like a fencer.
How do you cultivate a team atmosphere in a decidedly individual sport?
The first thing we do, even at the intro meeting, is that we tell them that we run our sport like a family, like a community, and we are always supporting each other. That's huge and so important. I tell them that they're never fencing alone, that they always have other people behind them. I also tell them the stories of how The best I ever fenced was when it wasn't for me, when it was for my team. And it is such an amazing experience when you put yourself aside for a greater good. And you create that culture. It's a culture of positivity. It's a culture of support. At the end of practices, I always tell them, tell yourself 2 good things about yourself every day. Sometimes I flip that on its head and I say, tell me about something somebody else did really great for you. And so that they can know that just because some of these kids are so hard on themselves, it's just, we have, at the high school I coach at the Academy for Science and Engineering, and we also have a magnet program for science and engineering. And right now, I'd say we're probably 70% Academy and magnet, and then 30% the regular high school, the regular Morris Hills kids. And I was a regular Morris Hills kid, so I relate to that. And what it makes for is you've got these kids who've got parents that are very driven, they're very driven, and they can be from any walk of life. The regular Hills kids tend to ground those kids when they're being too hard on themselves. But they also are helpful because, like, when somebody needs help in physics, it helps. Yeah. And so, really, in the intro, I say, we can help you. If you think that this is going to be too much time, it's 3 months out of the year. But if you need help in geometry, we've got this. If you need help, we are always a week. And that's really the foundation, because it is scary. That's the beauty of fencing, is that you're the only one out there. But that's the scary part of fencing, is that you're the only one out there.
Right.
And I try to have them balance that, because some of these kids have genuine anxiety. And knowing that they have people behind them helps them.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really interested now in your online persona of the fencing referee. When did you start this? And what do you hope to accomplish with your fencing referee persona?
To be honest, I started the Fencing Referee YouTube channel because I was not being able, because of a variety of reasons, to be a certified referee instructor. I had somebody holding me back, and I basically went in classic Lisa fashion. I said, well, if you're not going to let me do it this way, I'm going to do it another way. So there. And circling back to what I call invisible work, there are so many details of refereeing that people don't realize are happening. Like when we are refereeing, we're focusing on not just the action, but the safety of them. If the glove's undone, if the zipper's undone, if somebody puts something behind a strip because it's a club, we have got to be everywhere and nowhere. We've got to be super focused on what we're doing. And I realized that I was teaching the same things over and over again to young referees as I was mentoring and helping them, because I hire a lot of developing referees. Right now, 2 or 3 of those developing referees that I've helped are now FIEB. So one of them is not yet an FIEB, but man, he will be soon, because he's getting the opportunity to do some cadet events. So it's really kind of cool to be that person. But I realized that there was a knowledge base that wasn't out there that was very fundamental. And I couldn't believe nobody else had done it. And I now, the FIE has done something that has really improved their assessment of, to make new FIEBs, is that they're actually watching people referee. It used to be you just go into a room and referee a video that was projected on a wall, typically, which means it's not organic. You have to say fence, you say halt to something that is, they're not stopping because it's a video. And now they're making people do the tests at actual events. And I was at Junior Pan Ams, and I had somebody from South America, this was the Junior Pan Ams that was in Havana, tap me on the shoulder and go, "Are you Lisa?" Because I recently cut my hair short. Can I just tell you, I cannot believe it took me this long to cut my hair short, because I love it. The mask is so much easier. Everything's so much easier. Less shampoo, whatever. They tapped me on the shoulder and they said, "Are you Lisa?" And I went, "Yes. We used your videos to help me prepare for this." Or we used your videos to help us prepare for this test. Mm-hmm. And I'm like going, oh, no pressure, right? Or pressure. I'm like, oh, I hope I did a good job. And really, that was the pervasive intention of the whole thing, was that if I can make one referee be more comfortable with the multitude of things that they have to concentrate on, then that can actually, trickling is not the right way to put it, but it can actually work its way up. That if you create a local referee that's better, that local referee can become a regional referee, that regional referee can become a national referee, and then that national referee can be an international referee. But we have a knowledge base that we're not putting out there, and that's why I started.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and you've also recently become a published author. So talk about your books. Like, what are they? How'd you get the idea? All of that good stuff.
Well, just like I said about the YouTube channel, I couldn't believe there was nothing out there. I was saying to my fencers, like every coach says, make sure you write stuff down. But nobody tells you what that stuff is that you need to write down for the most part. Some coaches do, some people don't. And the other stuff that was out there was very disjointed and confusing and really vague. You can't tell a fencer who's been only fencing a year, here's a blank book, go write. You can't. They won't know what to write. And I've been doing scouting with my team for several years now because our qualification process, we have to fence these 10 teams at our qualifier, and then we have to fence them, blah, blah, blah. So I was just like, well, duh, we should be writing this stuff down. Because when you have scouting data, what I call it scouting information, you will actually have less anxiety because you have an idea of what they're going to do. Because a lot of these kids are high-stress kids, and if you know just one thing to prepare you for when you're fencing that athlete, you will be more calm, more focused, more ready for them. I sometimes call them bookend touches, where you can do the same touch the first, 8th, and 15th of the bout, because it's like just, in this certain area of the strip, they hover and you can go into them with a feet attack, but you can't do that every time because they're going to be wary of it. So I call them money moves, and that's one of the really great things that scouting can do. And because there was nothing else out there, I was just like, okay, nothing else is out there. I would also like to say I did this when I was a competing athlete. I would scout my pool. Are they righty? Are they lefty? What are the big things that they do? And I remember it was 1996 because I had a car accident that I did ligament damage to my thumb, and I had rotational whiplash. And I had stopped refereeing for like a half season because I was annoyed with whatever. And I dove back into refereeing, and all of my competitors knew that I was taking notes on them. So when I came back after almost 2 years, they were like, we saw you watching us. We know. And I'm like, come on, because I was hoping that I would get like some freebie touches because they would be like, oh, Lisa's out of shape. And no, they saw me watching them.
Yeah.
And so I did this as an athlete, and it's to me, it's a no-brainer. But this past weekend, I actually had a coach say, this is a game changer. And I've also had elite-level athletes tell me, this helps me be focused. Mm-hmm. And I just am so honored by that. And I'll say his name, Jose Zamora. He's my, what is called, a review on Amazon. He's my review on Amazon saying, wow, this has helped me. And when you're helping, and this past weekend, I had this little tiny fencer, and I took a picture of my book next to his epes, and after the bout, he thanked me. Because he's this little tiny fencer, it helped him. So I'm like, holy Toledo, I created something that can help him, but also help the other end of the spectrum. And I love that our sport, that we're all still learning, that there's all still ways to evolve and become better. And I think that's phenomenal, that we have something that is not just set, and that we can keep changing and can keep getting better.
Well, if people are looking for your book on Amazon, what title should they look for?
If they just put Campi-Sapery and they just put my last name in, Campi-Sapery, that's going to be the easiest way. I have 3 different scouting books. I'm hoping within the next few months to get out another just scouting book and another tournament book. Right now, the scouting book's got 15 tournaments that you can do, because one of the other problems I have with the other books is that they had like 50 pool pages and then 50 DE pages, but they weren't all connected. Right. There's also post-tournament evaluation. But you can find it on Amazon Prime, you can find them at Absolute, and you can find them at Blue Gauntlet. And then they're not on Leon Paul's website, but Leon Paul USA at tournaments sell them as well. I'm not sure how many they have left because Summer Nationals, they kind of all got sold for the most part.
Nice. That's really good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And if you're at a tournament and you're listening to this and you would like me to sign your scouting book, I would be happy to do that. There are 3 different versions, and they have 3 different colors. The red is foil, the silver is saber, and the blue, yeah, I said that right. The red is foil, the silver is saber, and the blue is epee. And that's because there are different parameters for, basically the back of the book is like an address book. So if I had fenced you, Kate, I would look in the S's and say, oh, this is what she does in the box. So the saber has a section of in the box. My favorite example in the box is, how does a person counterattack in the box? I want to know if they squirm, if they do opposition, if they do timing. Because that speaks to how I finish in the box. Or that speaks to, maybe I disengage, I do. So to me, I had a lot of parents look at this over at Summer Nationals and go, this was truly created with a competitor in mind. And I went, well, yeah. And if you look at the about this book, I have something to the effect of, read this. Seriously, read this. This will help you. And a lot of my friends go, okay, that's very Lisa. That I'm like, seriously, read this. Like, seriously. And they tease me. They're like, that sounds so Lisa. And I'm like, yeah, no. It's hard to be sarcastic in print, but I'm working.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are drawing near to the end of our time together. So we'll finish up with a mixture of famous questions from James Lipton and Marcel Proust.
Ooh.
What is your favorite word?
Can it be 2 words? It's Aunt Lisa. Almost said in one breath. Okay. And last bout. Those are also another set of favorite words.
What is your least favorite word?
Cancel.
What sound or noise do you love?
We have an outdoor kitty, a stray, who has adopted us, and I love her happiness sound. Like that between a purr and a meow, and she's just like, we call her Akbar because she was terrified of us, and everything was a trap. Everything is a trap, it's a trap. And she's just found a home, and she makes this sound,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What sound or noise do you hate?
I guess it's a love-hate. It's the beeping of a machine during the national anthem. Like, I can't hear the national anthem without some, machine going beep, beep, beep. I'm like, okay, that's just wrong. I shouldn't be hearing the national anthem in my head and I hear a fencing machine beeping. That's pretty funny, but that beeping.
What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
I wish I had had some more solid science as an undergrad, because I've always thought of doing my PhD in exercise physiology. And being an academic in that, being a scientist in that would be awesome.
And what profession would you not like to do?
That's a good question. I don't remember when, let me think about that. Oh, that's easy. Working, I was a caterer, like, how would you like this hors d'oeuvre kind of caterer? And boy, do your feet hurt, and boy, do people not realize how hard it is. So I guess that would be it. It's worse than refereeing.
And that's really
the worst part.
Something.
And that's the worst part of refereeing. It's not the coaches, it's not the athletes, it's that your feet hurt. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah, it's surprising how exhausting it is to do that all day, physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
Where would you like to live?
Well, I preface that by saying I would want to win Powerball so I could have a variety of homes, like one home in the city so that I could go to Broadway shows with my husband, one home by the ocean so I could hear the ocean, one home like in the mountains by a lake. So I would just be wealthy and able to go to whatever home I wanted. I guess that would be. Yeah.
What do you value most in your friends?
I guess the list is pretty short, but almost all of my friends are super smart. They're very respectful, and they've got amazing humor. So kind of that amalgam of intellect, respect, and humor. That's just, those three things are the most important.
Who is your hero?
My parents. Both of my parents. Just, my mom passed away 2 years before Barb. But just smart, intelligent people that made me have this scientist brain of mine. So I think that if I'm allowed to cop out and say two, it would be my parents.
And what is your motto?
My athletes would say is to tell yourself two good things about yourself every day. But for me, I tell them also to be fierce and be free and be yourself. That's just it. And that's what fencing allows you to do, is to be fierce, be free, and be yourself.
Well, thanks so much for spending this time with me today. I've really enjoyed getting to know you better, and congratulations on the success of your books.
Thank you. It's been really very gratifying for people I respect to tell me, wow, like they've just been impressed. Greg Macialis, although, was teasing me. He goes, this checklist could work for elite level athletes too, because we had people forgetting stuff for zonals. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't think the checklist would help anybody but the kids, right?
Yeah.
But it's been overwhelming positive experience, because a lot of people are just like, that I didn't know that this could be something that could help them. So it's been great.
Yeah, you never know how you're going to be able to help somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Very thought-provoking on my part as well, so I appreciate that. I always like things that are going to help me organize stuff in my brain so that I can become better.
All right. Until next time.
All right. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Big thanks are in order for my friend and teammate Tony Escueda, who created all of the music for this podcast and who edits every interview. Also thanks to my husband David Sierra, who supports all of my crazy ideas unconditionally. Thank you as well to all of my listeners out there, especially those of you at Summer Nationals who kept asking me if I was going to do any more interviews. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that life outside of fencing sometimes gets in the way of the things I want to accomplish in the fencing world. Thank you for your patience, and it looks like this is going to be able to happen again for a while. Past episodes of the Saber Coach Kate podcast can be found on iTunes, Google Music, Libsyn, and on my blog, www.wordpress.com/sabercoachkate. If you have any suggestions for interviews or questions that you'd love me to ask someone in your fencing world, you can email me at sabercoachkate@gmail.com, or you can message me on my Facebook page. I'd love to hear from you.